In the days when the earth was filled with uncertainty, and the hearts of men wavered like reeds in the wind, the Lord began a great work. He sought to raise a people who would not falter, a chosen generation who would stand as beacons of his light in the darkness. Across the lands, whispers arose of a divine stirring, a calling for men and women to rise beyond the ordinary and step into the extraordinary. From the courts of the faithful, a voice echoed, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few." This was not a call for the faint-hearted, but for those willing to endure trials that would forge their spirits into vessels worthy of the Master's use. For the Lord had declared, "Many are called, but few are chosen." And so, the great question was set before all: are you ready to be among the chosen? Among the multitudes was a young man named Elias. His heart burned with a desire to serve. Though his life had been marked by hardship, he had known hunger, loss, and despair, but his faith had carried him through. One night, as he knelt in prayer, the heavens seemed to open, and a voice, tender yet firm, spoke to him, "Elias, I have called you by name. Will you trust me, even when the path is hidden from your sight?" Elias, trembling, replied, "Here I am, Lord. Send me." Thus began his journey, a path marked by 3 great tests, trials that would shape him and all who followed the divine call. These tests were not for the weak, but for those willing to be refined like gold in the furnace, to shine forth with unwavering faith. The first test came swiftly, as if the enemy sought to strike fear into Elias's heart before he could take his first steps. It was the test of faith, where the very ground beneath him seemed to crumble. His fields, once fertile, were struck by drought. His family, once united, faced discord. Friends turned away, and whispers of doubt began to creep into his mind. "Where is your God now?" the adversary taunted. But Elias remembered the words of the Scriptures, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." One night, as Elias stood beneath the vast expanse of stars, he cried out, "Lord, why have you allowed this?" And the voice returned, firm but compassionate, "Elias, do you trust me? Will you walk by faith and not by sight?" Though his heart was heavy, Elias chose to believe. He clung to the promises of God, even when his feelings told him otherwise. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, yet Elias stood firm. Each moment of doubt became a moment of surrender, and his faith grew like a tree planted by streams of water, its roots deep and unshaken. Then, one morning, the rain came. The parched earth drank deeply, and life returned to the land. Elias understood that the drought had not been a punishment but a lesson, a way for God to deepen his reliance on him. His faith, once fragile, was now unbreakable. But the journey was far from over. The test of time and patience awaited him, a trial that would stretch his endurance to its very limits. The Lord had given Elias a vision, a glimpse of a future filled with purpose. He saw himself standing before nations, proclaiming the word of God, healing the broken-hearted, and bringing hope to the weary. But days turned into years, and the vision remained unfulfilled. Elias began to question, "Did I misunderstand your promise, Lord? Have you forgotten me?" The silence was deafening, yet in it, Elias began to hear the gentle whisper of the Spirit. "Wait upon the Lord. Be still and know that I am God." During this season, Elias was tempted to act on his own, to take shortcuts to fulfill the vision. Yet each time he attempted to move ahead of God, the doors remained firmly shut. Frustration grew, but so did his understanding. He recalled the story of Joseph, who waited 13 years in chains before stepping into his destiny, and of Abraham, who waited 25 years for the fulfillment of God's promise. Elias realized that the waiting was not a delay but a divine process. God was not withholding the promise but preparing him for it. In the quiet moments of prayer and reflection, Elias learned patience and trust. He discovered that dependence on God's timing, rather than his own, was the key to true peace. Then, suddenly, as if the heavens had opened, opportunities arose. The vision began to unfold, not by Elias's efforts, but by God's divine orchestration. What had once seemed distant and unattainable now became a reality. And Elias understood that the waiting had been a necessary preparation. The final trial was the wilderness experience, a season of profound isolation and testing. Like Jesus, who was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, Elias found himself in a place where every comfort and security was stripped away. He faced betrayal, financial ruin, and the loss of loved ones. It was a barren land, both physically and spiritually. Elias felt abandoned. "Lord, have you forsaken me?" he cried. But the wilderness was not a place of punishment, it was a place of preparation. In the solitude, Elias began to hear God's voice more clearly than ever before. The distractions of the world faded, and the still, small voice of the Lord became his guiding light. It was in this desolate place that Elias's character was refined. He confronted his fears, doubts, and insecurities, laying them bare before God. The Lord began to strip away his reliance on earthly things and taught him to depend wholly on him. Each day was a battle, yet each victory brought strength and clarity. The wilderness was also a training ground. The Lord placed specific demands on Elias, to pray without ceasing, to meditate on the scriptures daily, and to practice radical obedience. These disciplines, though difficult, became the foundation of his spiritual life. Elias emerged from the wilderness not as the man he once was, but as a vessel shaped by the Master's hand. When Elias finally returned, the transformation was undeniable. He was no longer the weary man who had entered the wilderness, but a beacon of God's glory, ready to fulfill his calling. His faith was unshakable, his patience unwavering, and his reliance on God absolute. The trials had not been easy, but they had been necessary. Elias understood that the tests were not meant to break him, but to prepare him for the work ahead. He began to minister with power and authority, bringing hope to the hopeless, healing to the broken, and light to the darkness. His story spread across the land, inspiring others to rise and embrace their own callings. The message was clear: God does not choose the strongest, the wealthiest, or the most talented. He chooses those who are willing to be refined, those who will endure the tests of faith, patience, and the wilderness. For it is in the fire of trials that the chosen are forged. Elias's journey became a testament to the faithfulness of God, a reminder that his promises are true and his timing perfect. And so, the call echoes through the ages: many are called, but few are chosen. Will you be among them? This is the story of Elias, but it is also the story of all who dare to say, "Here I am, Lord. Send me." It is a journey of faith, a walk of patience, and a path through the wilderness, a path that leads to the fulfillment of God's divine purpose. To all who read this, take heart. The trials you face are not in vain. They are shaping you, refining you, and preparing you for a greater glory. Trust in the Lord, wait upon him, and embrace the wilderness. For in the end, you will emerge not as you were, but as a chosen one, fit for the Master's work. God bless you, and may you find strength in his promises.